Well, hi, welcome to that very immediate start there. So I am Tammy from ESL Library, and I'm going to be talking today about teaching social justice online with ESL Library. I'm going to basically be doing an overview of the entire platform, but I'm going to be highlighting our social justice materials specifically. So here we are, we're in ESL Library. ESL Library, just for those of you that don't know, is a paid subscription platform. So you do pay to get access to the site, or in many cases, your school or your district will pay to get access, and then they have teacher accounts within it. So if you do think that the site looks interesting or might be useful to you and your students, then you can go ahead and just let one of your administrators know, and they can reach out to us at hello@esllibrary.com, and we can get them connected so everyone can get a chance to try it out. And if you are an ORTESOL member, you have the ability, you have access to free access to our site for a bit. And so you can reach out to, I believe it's president@ortesol.com.org, and you'll be able to see it. And hi, welcome everyone who's joining right now. We're just getting started. We had a little bit of a troubleshooting right at the beginning, as is, pretty standard. So anyway, if you are an ORTESOL member, go ahead and reach out, and Leigh will put the link in the chat for that. Okay, great. So once you're logged into your account, you will see your name in the top right corner, and that's how you'll know that you are logged in properly. And when you log in, you'll see this main page here. This is what we call our Discover page. And it changes every week, sometimes daily. We have different materials here on the main page, whatever is relevant right now to the world. And obviously Halloween is a big one right now. There's new lessons that'll be featured here. So we have one on affirmations. We have an amazing collection on social emotional learning materials. Today, I'm going to be focusing on those social justice materials specifically, but there are lots of great social emotional learning materials as well. And then we have, different new lessons about the supply chain crisis. Leigh and I are joking, but also not joking, about how we both learned something from the clothing care symbols flashcard category that was recently created. Everything from total beginners, to advanced. So you can see we have the negotiating, supply chain crisis, but we also have materials that are going to be appropriate for children or just complete beginners with low literacy. So we have our English with the Washington Post materials here. So ecotherapy for kids is another great kind of social emotional learning. And I'm talking about social emotional learning because it's a very popular topic right now, but also I think that it's a great complement to teaching social justice topics, because when we're approaching issues of social justice, of course, it's not just what we're teaching. We want to, of course, represent lots of different cultures, lots of different learners, and present materials from their different cultures. We also want to talk about different social justice issues, but we also want to teach in a way that's supporting our most vulnerable learners. And I think that English language teachers specifically are usually extra sensitive to that and extra aware of that. So I'm sure most of you are already in that mindset, but I just want to point that out, that nothing exists in a vacuum, right? So the social emotional learning is an excellent support to teaching social justice and teaching in a more equitable way. So anyway, you can find a lot here on our Discover page. I'll let you guys explore that, but I will also point out that we highlight our blog posts a lot on the main page, and including this great blog post I love, the 20 affirmations for English learners. All of our blog posts are completely, they're free and available to anyone. So if you are a subscriber, but you see a blog post that you love, you can always share that with other educators. And if you're not an ESL Library subscriber, that's totally great too. You can just go to esllibrary.com/blog, and you'll be able to access all of those blog resources. And I'll just click into one real quick. If you are a paid subscriber, you'll have this little folder icon in the top right corner. And that folder icon allows, if you click on it, you can save this. So I might create a new folder that I call social emotional learning and save that there. And I can use this as most of the blog posts are inspiration for teachers. This one actually happens to be one for students. So, you know, you could actually send this to your students directly if you wanted to, the link to this blog post, if it looks like it's an appropriate level for them. All right, but let's go back to the main page here. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to find material on the ESL library platform. It's called ESL library because it's a library of materials, right? There's a lot of different content on the site, which can sometimes be overwhelming if you're completely new. And we're working on creating new, clearer ways for people to find the materials. If you've used the site before, you're probably familiar with our lesson page, which just has all of our materials broken down into these different categories. So we'll take a peek at one or two of these today, but you can see we have grammar and a section for young learners and adult literacy here. More of like your everyday English. So if your students are needing support in like talking about going to the doctor or taking the bus or something like that, that might be in the everyday English area. And then of course you've got your academic and business English and things like that, more like tested skills, skimming, scanning, stuff like that. And then things like famous people, famous places, famous things. That's where you might find like famous people might be an area where we have lots of information about our activists. So social justice activists, which we'll look at in a minute. English with the Washington Post features a lot of news events, many of which I think ESL library tends to gravitate towards posts that relate to social justice issues just naturally. We're really interested in creating meaningful discussion with our students. And I think just one of our beliefs at the company is that it is so important to have open discussion with one another. And that's one of the reasons that we believe that English language education is important, is to facilitate open, respectful discussion. And so that's why we just sort of naturally gravitate towards those types of topics on our platform. But of course, we have lots of, practical materials as well, your grammar and things like that. But that's not what we're focusing on today. All right. So let's take a peek. There, like I said, lots of ways to find materials. You may be familiar with just browsing through the lessons or the flashcards, the resources, and the blog posts. Resources, those are things like grammar charts or word searches, or maybe assessment tools for you, like a needs assessment for your students. So they're everything that would support a lesson that isn't a lesson plan itself. So definitely explore the resources once you're in the site yourself. But I want to go to our collections, and our collections, if you go to materials collections, that's a thematic grouping of our materials. So we have grammar, and if you click into something like grammar, you can see how the breakdown works. Maybe you're teaching perfect verb tenses, you click in there. And on the left-hand side, it's broken down into a bunch of sections. For grammar, it's pretty predictable. Perfect verb tenses are broken down into present perfect and past perfect. And if you click on something like past perfect, you can see the results. Not a lot in past perfect, but you can also filter by level and the audience if you want something for teens and adults or young learners. Now, if you go to something a little different, one of our different collection categories, something like global issues, for example, you'll find, collections on gender equality, COVID, social justice, the environment, politics and government. So you can see how many of these would be excellent supports for teaching your social justice lessons. Now, obviously, we're going to take a peek at the social justice collection here, but just as a reminder that many of you probably don't need, issues relating to the environment, politics and government, those are all, it's that intersection, right? We know that social justice, issues of like poverty and equity, those are all affected by environmental issues. So we'll take a look at a lesson in a little bit that I think it may not be exactly specifically about social justice, but it hits that intersection, and it allows you to have these really interesting, meaningful discussions with your students, where if you're talking about something like school uniforms, you might bring in a social justice element by first hearing what's their opinion on school uniforms, and you'll hear the kind of classic, discussions that students tend to bring up. But then you might also bring in questions of like, what about if are school uniforms, equally valid, equally good or equally bad if you're in a wealthy area, or if you're in an area where there's more poverty, or if you're living in an area where there's more mixed economic status of the students. So I think it's just a really good reminder that we have this intersection of different topics and ideas. So when you're trying to teach social justice, bring those up. But let's click directly into the social justice category here. All right, so on the left-hand side, again, we have it broken down into these different themes. So first of all, we just have vocab and usage. If you are trying to use more, this is a blog post here, you can see in a resource. If you're trying to use more inclusive language as a teacher, as an educator, you might click into one of these inclusive language in English language teaching blog posts. And so you can click into that. I think it's a fantastic read and a good reminder. But again, you can always save that. And I have a folder that I actually just called professional development so that I can browse the site, find things that look interesting, and then just save them and I can read them later when I have a little more time. But let's go back. Oh, by the way, whenever you use our search tool, or if you're just clicking through these, by default, you're going to have it in this sort of list view where it has kind of a lot of information. This is really handy, if you're wanting to read in depth about all of these different, who the audience is and what the blog post is about or what the lesson is about. But as you get more familiar with the site, or you're just trying to quickly skim through materials, I recommend using this little grid tool right here, this kind of compact view. And that'll allow you to kind of quickly see, I'm looking for some kind of a topic to discuss with my students, maybe regarding the issue of racism. We want to discuss issues around racism. And so I can quickly skim through here and find something that might be appropriate for my students. So maybe on Columbus Day, for example, or Indigenous Peoples Day, maybe I want to bring up a discussion about the International Day of World Indigenous Peoples, or I'm wondering, oh yeah, I was going to say our Columbus Day lesson is in here as well. And that is also a lesson that encourages discussion about whether or not it should be called Columbus Day, and get into those kinds of discussions. So anyway, allows you for a little bit quicker browsing. You can see we have issues on gender and sexual orientation, criminal justice. I like that we have this whole collection on activists. So if you ever teach in that jigsaw style of teaching where your students maybe get into a group of 4 and then they break out and meet with students from other groups, and each group is studying their own activist, for example, they can all get back into groups together and then talk about the different activists they learned when they visited the other groups or met with a student from another group. So this is a really fun category for that. And again, you can always filter by level. The lessons on the activists looks like it's mostly low, intermediate to advanced, but you can see that there, and your students could even choose, you could have a selection of here's activist reading for low intermediate students, here's for intermediate, and here's for advanced students. So that's kind of useful to have that breakdown there. All right. And so that's our collections. One more place I want to show you where you can find materials, and then we'll actually dive into the materials themselves. Let's hop into the class prep here and then go to our folders. So I feel like this is kind of a hidden feature. It is about a year old on our site. So the folders have been around and they're fantastic. They allow you to organize all of our materials, our lessons, our flashcards, our resources, our blog posts. Those can all be collected and organized into these folders. So like I was saying, you can create your own social justice folder, or SEL folder, or maybe you want to break it down by units in terms of like what, season it is or whatever makes sense for you, right? By default, when you click class prep folders, it will take you to that My Folders tab. But if you click on the other tab or the third tab, depending on how your account is set up, you'll see ESL library folders. So click on the ESL library folders tab, and we have all of these pre-made, they're kind of like pre-made textbooks in a way, or pre-made like a digital course made by our publishing team. So if you want to teach, you want to support your students that do not have strong digital literacy skills, for example, We have a course on digital literacy aimed at intermediate to advanced students, or digital literacy aimed at beginners to low intermediate. There's also financial literacy. Of course, we've got like grammar courses and your 4 skills, your listening, speaking, reading, writing, aimed at different age groups and different levels. But since we're focused on social justice, I think that the financial literacy and the digital literacy are particularly, important to notice here. And so if I'm interested in teaching digital literacy to beginners, I might click into that and just kind of browse through. And in this case, it has like a recommended teaching order. It starts with a needs assessment that your student can do. Some of the collections will end with a summative assessment. At the end, we're in the process of adding those. It looks like this one does not have one yet. But I think our grammar courses already have them, and a lot of the 4 skills courses do. So if you look at this and you say, okay, these flashcards and these lessons look reasonable to me, I think I want to use this set, then all you need to do is go to the 3-dot menu next to the name of the course, or next to the name of the folder, and click on it. And if I have one digital literacy tip for you or for you to convey to your students, both depending on how tech savvy or tech confident you are, my tip is go to and click under the 3 dots. Whenever you see 3 dots, be curious and click into it, because it changes on every single page. So in this case, if you click on the 3 dots, it'll allow you to copy this folder to My Folders. And so what that's going to do is take it from here, move it to My Folders, and then once it's in My Folders, it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. So then you can click into that folder that you just copied. And that was a horrible example for me to click into. Let's click into this one. So when you click into it, you can then drag and drop them into the order that you want to teach it to your students. You can click on the 3-dot menu and say, I'm never going to teach that lesson to my students, and completely delete it. Or you can add additional lessons and materials, resources, blog posts to that folder. So use the class prep folders, go to that 3rd tab of ESL library folders. Use that as a starting point for these lessons that you're working on with your students, but then adapt it and make it yours. And if you are part of a school or a district that has an ESL library account, there's also the option to share that perfectly refined course that you've created with other teachers, other educators in your school or district, which is also very helpful if you tend to have like a lead teacher or someone who's developing the curriculum to share with other teachers. That's helpful. And again, the way that you would share that is by just going to your perfectly curated list or folder, click on the 3 dots and click Share With. And then that allows you to either select the individual teacher, like maybe I want to share with Lay. I only have one teacher in my group in this case, but I could choose who I want here, or I can just toggle this on to make it available to all of the teachers within my school or group. All right. So that's enough about finding materials and kind of organizing materials, although that's, obviously where you always start. Let's look at an actual lesson itself. And I am going to do that by going into our actual lessons area, just because I am most comfortable and familiar with it this way. And by the way, you can always filter by levels on this page too. If I'm looking for categories that apply to my beginners, bam, there we go. And it'll get rid of all the categories where there's nothing for them. Take it with a grain of salt, but that's a good starting point. And let's hop into our discussion starter lesson that we have over here. I'm going to dive right into this. Discussion starters is probably my favorite category. It's aimed at low intermediate to advanced students. So, if you've got really low students, it's not going to be appropriate for them. Most of the topics are aimed at teenagers to adults. However, some of these materials I think reach down to maybe grade 4 or above, especially our environmental section where we have topics on zoos or food waste, composting, climate change. There's a lot here that I think would be appropriate for younger students as well, as long as they have the appropriate English level. But you can see there's a lot in here. And like I said, consider that intersection between, different social justice issues and environmental issues and or educational issues or business issues, especially when you're working with adults. I think that's of course with children that's important, but with adults especially, I think it's important to bring up these topics. And even well, just as an example here, you can see there's cocoa fields and child slavery. That's a pretty heavy topic. And I will say we have a few pretty heavy topics, more than a few actually. Militarized police. There are some heavy topics in here, so you always want to preview them, make sure it's appropriate for your student group that you're working with. But there are a lot of lighter weight topics as well, like staycations and the mom and pop shops. But I think it would be really interesting to take a lesson. Let's just click into this one on the cocoa fields and child slavery. It's Halloween-ish. Tis the season of Halloween and Thanksgiving and all of our winter holidays. There's a lot of chocolate going on right now in the next couple of months, and absolutely let's enjoy our chocolate. But I think it would be interesting to have a discussion about something like the cocoa fields and child slavery, and then connect it to a fun cultural event that's happening. And it should be fun, but you can bring a small amount of how can everyday people make a difference, and by discussing and bringing that intersection. So let's just click into here real quick. We have, when you click into a lesson, like we finally have gotten to, you'll have a PDF version, you'll have a digital version that you can use to teach over Zoom or Google Meet, or to project on a screen behind you. And all of these digital tasks, which we'll look at in a moment, those can all be shared with your students as digital homework or digital tasks for them to do. So if they have a cell phone or like a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop, it makes it really easy and convenient for them to do these, assuming they have a basic level of digital literacy. And those can all be assigned with the assignment manager. So let's pop into the PDF viewer very quickly, just to give you a sense of what this looks like. I think some teachers and also some students are just more comfortable with having PDFs or printable materials. Of course, you can display a PDF digitally, just like I'm doing right now. You can use the tool to zoom in and make it bigger if you're sharing it on a screen behind you, or if you're sharing your screen over Zoom or Google Meet. And you can find these different pre-reading questions. And so again, we're in a lesson that focuses on child slavery in the cocoa fields. So it starts with some warm-up questions. It goes through a basic vocab preview. You'll do a reading. You can see the vocab in this one is quite heavy. We have beaten and trafficking. So this is a pretty heavy topic I chose. They'll go through that reading. They'll do some basic comprehension questions to make sure they understood the text, do a little vocab practice. And then it leads into really the meat of the lesson, which are these discussion questions. And so here is great one. Number 2, what can the average person do to help reduce child slavery? And so I could absolutely see this lesson pairing beautifully with a project where your students then go and research how, what companies, maybe what local companies are using, different brands of chocolate, what brands of chocolate are known to support child slavery, or countries maybe that have higher instances of child slavery. So it could really lead into a nice research project, or you could just provide a link to your students with that information that has a list. There are lists of chocolate, child slave supporting chocolate. I don't know, I guess it's probably not phrased that way, but you get the idea. So anyway, cool projects that you can do. I love thinking about, different projects that my students can do to pair with lessons like this. And then there's also a little survey your students can ask and a listening activity. And then at the very end, you have your answer key. So I'm looking at the teacher version. There's also a student version that doesn't have the answer key. And we also have Canadian and British English in addition to the American English. The audio that goes with the PDFs, those are down at the bottom left-hand corner. And you can download that audio, you can stream it live, and there's also the British audio there as well, if that is relevant to you. But let's hop out of here. Oh, I will say that there actually are a few little tools you can use, nothing too exciting, but there's a toolbar here with pen tools. So if you want to draw a little heart, or probably not draw a heart, but maybe like do a connect the word to the correct answer, you can do things like that. You can also share the student PDF with your students by clicking on this little pushpin icon. You just click copy the link, and then you can paste it into emails. You can paste it into Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, WhatsApp, whatever. So, or if you want, share to Google Classroom, that's an option too. So, and then of course you can print and download these materials as well. If you are teaching digitally, I strongly encourage you to use our digital task player, which has, I'd say, an 85%, 90 to 95% overlap with what's in the PDF version. Usually you'll find a video in the digital version, which is a little bit more engaging way to start those warm-up questions. And then you'll have all of those same tasks, but in a more interesting kind of matching method that you can use. There's also open-ended questions and typing in the blanks. So let's look very quickly at this warm-up video. We will spend just a few seconds on this, but just to show you what it looks like. So I did that very quickly. You have your warm-up questions right at the bottom, but they'll also be at the end of the video. And you can make it larger. So if I'm teaching right now, I'm sharing my screen with my students, or I'm displaying it on a screen behind me, I can make that larger in the bottom right-hand corner by clicking play.
Cocoa fields, child slavery. Did you know that chocolate is a billion-dollar industry?
Okay, so anyway, we won't watch through all of that, but we have a little video there and it leads up to our warm-up questions. So I can leave those up on the screen and we can have a discussion about that with my students. You also have the ability to use this little tiny gear icon in the bottom right-hand corner to slow the speed down to 3/4 speed or half speed. Or sometimes I like to be really silly with my students and speed it up to maybe 1.5 speed or something like that, and just see if they can catch any of it. So that's an option too, if you like to do that, and then bring it down to a slower speed. So whatever you want to do to keep it fun for your students. The matching activity, this is really straightforward. I sort of showed that already, but I want to just show, as I mentioned, you can do this live with your students by sharing your screen and eliciting those responses from your students. But you can also, when you're doing that, you're going to call on your students and say, hey, does anyone know the answer to number 1? What word has this meaning? And this is a preview, vocab preview activity, right? So it's meant to check if they already have this background knowledge and kind of start to build curiosity before you get into the lesson. But then as your students are responding in the chat or in real life or over their microphones, you can go ahead and click those in and then see, okay, let's see how we did as a class. Oh, we didn't do so well. So we got 1 out of 5 correct. So you can then review the answers, see what was incorrect, what the correct answer should have been, and also see what was correct. And if you had assigned this task, remember all of these tasks on the left-hand side can be assigned to your students as homework or digital tasks that you might assign before class, or even to maybe they watch the video in the first 10 minutes of class and then they have to do a little free writing, and then you can start this. So you can set due dates and you can even set due times. So all of these can be assigned as tasks or as homework for your students, for them to do if you want them to be the ones doing the clicking, and it'll keep records of their scores and their progress. That's an option. And so they'll see a screen just like this after their first try. You can try again, or they could try again. It'll completely start over. Let's look at just one more type in here. This is the listen and type. So this is your classic gap fill activity. We had a version of this on the PDF. In the digital format, I think it's pretty easy. We have the audio built right in here on the bottom. So you would just click play. Maybe you would, if you're teaching remotely, you might have your students have a piece of paper in real life and they can write down what they're hearing. And then afterward, you can ask them, what did you hear for gap number 1? And I didn't prep well for this. I don't remember what the answer is for number 1 here. So I'm going to cheat, but we'll call this a teaching moment for you guys. There's this little apple icon. So in that list, there's a little apple icon, and that is your answer key in the digital format. So I can click on that, and instead of rarely, okay. So I can click on that and see what the answers are. Probably don't want to do that while you're sharing your screen with your students, but hey, if you want to, go for it. Anyway, so I'm going to randomly type in some answers there, and then let's go ahead and submit it. Again, I would be asking my students, hey, what did you guys hear for this first gap here? And maybe have them type it into the chat, shout it out over the microphone, or just tell me in real life, and then go through the set that way. And I'm going to go ahead and submit. 1 out of 11 correct. And I can, again, review my answers. It'll highlight what's correct there. And then if it's incorrect, we'll have a little X, and then it shows what's the correct response next to it. And if your students, maybe they are making an error towards the end of the set, you can just kind of scrub forward, click play, and then you can re-listen to that as a class. Or of course, if this had been assigned as homework, your students could then listen to that over and over and over as many times as they need to really like hone in that listening accuracy. They also have the option to fix their answers. So it'll underline what was correct and highlight what's incorrect. And then you can go up through, you can re-listen to this as a class, scrub forward to where you need to start, and then you can go ahead and submit that and keep doing that until you guys get it fully correct or not. Okay. And I just want to show one more task before we look at something for maybe a little lower literacy level and assigning homework to them. There's a speaking task. This is new to our platform. I think it's about maybe 3 months old now. This is the kind of task you want to assign as homework because you want your students recording their speaking. You don't want to record your speaking as a teacher. That's no fun for anyone. Then you're listening to yourself and it's just awkward. But if you assign it to your students as homework, this is excellent out of class speaking practice for them. So something for a higher level will look like this. There's actually lots of different speaking task types on the platform. This is one type. And it asks, have you ever been involved in a boycott? Explain, blah, blah, blah. What is one company you'd like to boycott? So when they are doing this on their own, I'm zoomed in quite a bit, so I'm scrolling for you, but they would go ahead, click this little microphone icon. They're going to record their answer. They have up to 2 minutes to record, and then they can click stop when they're done and then play to re-listen to their answer. If they don't like it, they can delete and start again. And if they like it, they can go ahead and submit it or go on to the next question. And then I'll just say thanks at the end. And we have lots of different, like I said, different task types. Sometimes it's a picture they have to describe. We'll see for the lower levels, it's just reading a word aloud, a single word out loud. So lots of different tasks. But I want to show something aimed at a little lower literacy level. Let's go actually back to our materials lessons, and we're going to hop to our word bank. Let's do the word bank here. So this is part of our young learner and adult literacy section. I think there is a discovery lesson on chocolate, so that could be a fun one to do too. But let's do the word bank, which is aimed at very low literacy levels. Although, you know, the dinosaur lesson has words that I don't even know. So goes to show that even your advanced students will find things to learn in here, or they'll just go through it quickly. But I'm going to hop into our lesson on community helpers, although feelings would be fantastic too. So this lesson on community helpers, I think this is a good one for helping your students become more comfortable with the names of people in their community. And you could even do projects where they're identifying people in their community, and then maybe they talk to them depending on who your students are, or maybe they are simply identifying where they can find them in their town, or how they would reach out to them if they needed help from these people. So there's a lot you can do to support your students. I'll be honest, the materials for social justice for lower level students, it's I think it requires a little more work on the teacher's part. I would be really interested if you guys, I can't see the chat right now, but if you wanted to post some ideas, if you do work with lower level students, how you address these different social justice issues with your lower level students. But I think the community helpers is a good one. It's hard to have, you know, really, really meaningful discussions with your students when they're very low literacy level, but obviously it's not impossible and we shouldn't ignore having these discussions with them either. So anyway, let's poke our heads into this one real quick. To assign homework to your students, the first thing you want to do is you want to be familiar with those digital tasks. So if you're not familiar, click really quickly into the task player and you'll see, oh, a picture dictionary. I can take a quick peek at what that is. Image match, I already know what that is. See and spell, I can kind of guess what that is. But maybe I don't know what question time is, so I want to explore that. But you can get little clues and see that picture dictionary is a flashcard set. And of course, image match A is an image match task. See and say is a speaking task, and question time is open-ended questions. So it gives you a little bit of a quick clue, but eventually you're going to know exactly what all of these tasks are. There aren't so many types that it's hard to keep track of. And then once you're ready to assign tasks from this lesson, you're going to go to the assignment manager. So you can assign the lesson either to individual students or an entire class. I'm going to assign to my conversation class. I'm going to assign it to everyone. Well, maybe Sarah doesn't need it. I can deselect her, and then I'll go ahead and click continue. Now, if I want to assign all of the tasks in the lesson, there are 8 tasks for me to assign. I could just click select all, set a due date, and assign. Super quick. But for me, I like to pick and choose. And so I might choose the picture dictionary, maybe the image match, and maybe the see and say. Okay, so let's do that. And I'm going to go ahead and set a due date. And I can make them all due at the exact same day and time if I want to. So I'm using the top set a due date, but if you do want individual due dates or individual due times, you can set them individually. So let's set a due date for all of them. Let's make it due by next Friday. And I can pick a time. By default, it's midnight. And I want all of my students to be done in time for class. Maybe I have an evening class at 6. So I'm going to go ahead and make it due by 6. And now my 3 tasks are ready to assign. And I can again change the due date and due time if I need. All right, so now I'm done. If I happen to use Google Classroom, I can click on that little green icon, it'll post it to Google Classroom. But really all you need to do is send your students to esllibrary.com/students. And that's really the only site your students ever need to know. So on the student side, let's hop over to student land real quick. So on the student side of things, they go to esllibrary.com/students. They become very familiar with that. That's all they ever need to know. They're going to log in one click with Google. If they use Google, like Gmail or Google Calendar or something, they can one click in with Google. If you happen to use Clever at your school, they can one click sign in with Clever, or they can sign in the old fashioned way with the username and password. Oops, spell that correctly though. Log in, hopefully that works. Yes. Okay, so now I'm logged into my student's account. I am Kaylee at the moment, and it's very simple for your students. All they're going to see is what they need to do. That's what's staring at them. So they can click directly into that lesson and start doing it. All of their work that is late will be under this little tab that says late. And if it's like only 2 days late or something, it will be under the late tab, but there will be this alarm clock here to kind of call attention to that. But these are quite late, so there's no icon there harassing them. And then any lessons that they've fully completed will show under the completed tab, so they can revisit those at any time. They can check teacher feedback. I'm going to go into the community helper lesson and just quickly, very quickly, because I'm not a very good student, do these tasks. We have this awesome flashcard player. We have 3,000 flashcards on the site. picture dictionaries are pre-made flashcard sets, but you can create your own custom flashcard sets. You can edit the text and share them with your students so they can do self-study. I do a whole separate like 1 hour workshop on that. I'm obsessed with our flashcards. They're so cool. But this is the very simple pre-made version of them. And so it has the audio.
Crossing guard.
So my student can listen to that. And I'm not a good student, so I'm going to click through to the end and I could try again, but I'm going to go back to my assignments. And it records how long I spent, which was 35 seconds. I've completed that now. There's no score because it's just looking at something. But for something like the image match, I can go ahead and match those. Click on finished, got 2 out of 5 correct. If I want to try again, I can make a second attempt. And I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Yay, 5 out of 5 correct. Okay, so then for that kind of task where I make multiple attempts, it will record my score for me. I got 2 out of 5, and I can see my results from attempt 1 and attempt 2 right at the top with this drop-down menu. I can make as many attempts as I want. And then, oops, let's go and do really quickly the see and say. So this is that lower level speaking task where I'm going to record my answer. Doctor. And I'm going to skip the rest of them and submit that. And go back to my assignments. So this is an open-ended task. So I don't have a score yet, but my teacher can go ahead and give me feedback on that. And all of this information that you have access to, the student also has access to. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Let's go back to our teacher side. So I won't get too into depth into leaving feedback, but when you go to class prep and into the class that you assigned your homework, so that was my conversation class, I'm just going to follow this little blue icon to the student that needs my feedback. And I can just click through following that icon. I don't even have to think. And I can see that someone needs feedback. They pronounce the word doctor, and then I can rate and say that exceeded my expectations and I can leave feedback. Great job. The rest of these, they didn't record an answer, so I can skim through, submit that feedback. And now my student can see the feedback on their side. And it's changed that little blue icon to a little check mark to say, yep, feedback's given. And the eyeball is for results for those auto scored. So the little gray eyeball, if I want to, I can see the results from each attempt. And I can leave general comment for my student if I want to. And save that. And so now it changed that to a little comment box so that I know that I've completed that as well. So that's sort of the overview of the entire platform. There's a lot on the site, a lot to explore, but we hope that it makes it easier for you to have these meaningful discussions with your students. It's just such an important part of our jobs. All right. Let me switch views if I can real quick. I see Lay there. And I think you can probably, are there any questions? I'm not sure how quickly it launches into the next session here.
No questions. So should be good.
Awesome. Well, as a reminder, all ORTESOL members, you have access to free access to ESL library for a pretty reasonable amount of time, if I recall. So just reach out to president at ORTESOL, is it .com, .org? Okay, awesome.
.org. Yeah.
.org,
Yeah.
Thank you. President at ORTESOL.org, they'll verify that you're an active ORTESOL member, and then they'll give you that code. So you have a chance to explore. And again, if you love it, feel free to just go ahead and subscribe, or even better, let your administrator know and they can reach out to us. And I think we give a little bit of a discount if it's a group account, and we can set up a trial for all of the teachers in your school or district. So yeah. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Quick question, actually.
Oh yeah.
So this looks like a great, excellent site and resources. So you can enroll a whole class if your institution pays for being a member, or you can use it as an individual teacher to get materials from here, correct?
You can do both. If you're an
Mhm.
individual teacher, you can connect all of your students as well. You get 100 free student licenses, or free seats for your student. So yeah, as an individual teacher, and it's exactly the same if it's a school or a district. The only difference is it adds the ability to share with other teachers within your school or district. And if your school's paying for it, then you're not paying for it, which is nice for you.
I see. Okay. Great. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
That's great. Okay.
All right. Any other questions, or I think we're...
Thanks, Tammy and Lee. We appreciate your being here today and for sponsoring our part of our conference. So thanks a lot. And you guys can certainly, do you have an email? Did you include an email? Yes, hello@esllibrary.com, so people can address their questions directly to you. And then the president's email for questions related to our connection with ORTESOL. And we can probably even set that up for you within a week if you want to go ahead and start your free trial membership for those 6 months. For those of us who have already used our free trial membership, you can definitely enter the raffle to win another 12 months for free and use that time to kind of develop and scout out the site, develop your ideas and go through the site, and then ask your school to get that institutional membership. So.
Yeah, and we really do try to make it accessible for schools. So if there are like funding issues, or we try to support as much as we can. Of course, if your school can afford it, that allows us to support other schools that cannot. But yeah, just we try to support everyone. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy teaching. Bye.
I'll put the link to the program in the chat so you have that easy access to that. Otherwise, see you guys in another space.